To the Avrum Rosensweig show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and I'm delighted to be back. This show is all about ordinary people with extraordinary stories. Today, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Today, we're going to be talking with my niece, Devorah Mason, whom I interviewed in the past. And she is going to tell us about a recent trip, a tour, if you will, of the South in Israel that she took along with some of her techie colleagues. And we're going to elicit for you some of her feelings and thoughts, basically what she saw, and try to bring the situation in Israel to you here in the diaspora and also for our brothers and sisters in Israel. So stay tuned for the next little while. And let's launch right in here. Devorah, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want to just sort of give a little prelude to our interview by saying you and I have talked in the past. You made Aliyah a number of years ago. Your family lives there. You're a mother of five, and of course, you work in Israel in the tech environment. You're also a graduate lawyer. I like to see you sort of as my reporter in Israel. It sort of ups the quality of the podcast. And I do because you're highly articulate. The reviews and the feedback we got from our initial interview were outstanding. So let's get into this. Last week, you went down to Kfar Aza and Sderot in southern Israel. And you did that as part of a delegation to the south. Once again, you and your colleagues in the tech field went to see, to be eyewitnesses, and to share with others as to what you saw. So let's start off. How did this get set up? It's an interesting thing to go to a tour so early on of such a really a very challenging environment. How did this get started?
So actually, it was about 3 weeks ago. It just took me time to figure out how I would feel comfortable sharing the experience. And I only recently started to think about how and I would share it and what I would say. I have a lot of connections here in Israel. I have a lot of good friends. The tech world is very much like a network of colleagues and friends. It's a small shtetl, as they say. We all know a lot. We're all 1 degree of separation apart from somebody else in the tech industry. And I had been thinking about what's happening in the South and so on. I really wanted to have a chance to see it, but I didn't want to go on my own. And a colleague of mine, David Yahid, he reached out to me and said, a lot of people have been mentioning that they want to go down, and I'm taking a group. Would you like to join? It's tech leaders, VCs and so on, and even people coming from the US who landed and joined us on the tour. So people from across, there's a lot of expats, but a lot of Israelis as well. And he was taking the tour down and asked me if I wanted to join, to which I said yes. I decided like that was something I wanted to do. And so I joined him and the group on that day trip down to the south. And that was, yeah, like I said, that was about 3 weeks ago.
What were your feelings prior to going?
So I was feeling overwhelmed by the news, and I was seeing everything through the lens of, the media. And I needed to go and experience it on my own. I feel like that in general about Israel, that when you follow the news a lot, it can be overwhelming or depressing or dramatic, because obviously the media is focused largely in a large part on the agenda of the politicians and of course what's happening on the ground. Even if we don't necessarily see the whole picture, they share what we should be exposed to. I mean, we all know that. And I just had to go there and experience and see it in person. I couldn't like tolerate just being exposed to the news every day and seeing it from so far away.
So you go on a bus, you travel down south. How long was the trip?
So actually, they started the day in Tel Aviv. Whoever wanted to could join to watch the video. The video, the infamous video, which they also showed in the Hague today at the opening of Israel's defense, is a 47-minute video that it's not shared publicly, sharing a lot of the atrocities that were perpetrated on Israelis on October 7th. I was debating whether or not I wanted to see it. I think it's very important for reporters to see, politicians, world leaders to see that video. I didn't think that that would be good for my soul or good for me in general. I don't need to understand what happened. I have a very clear understanding, and I decided not to do that. So I ended up actually driving down and joining them, meeting them in Netivot, where from there we went to we got on the I joined them on the bus there, and we went from there to Kfar Aza.
All right. So you get to Kfar Aza. What was the overall feeling in the air amongst your colleagues and yourself as you
I actually want
arrived?
to say that the drive down was already a feeling of like getting closer, becoming apart. A lot of the roads have been, were empty or a little bit destroyed from, you could see where there had been battles on the cement, tanks that had gone out on that day, had destroyed, their potholes and so on. And then as you get more south, it becomes so green and so beautiful, large green fields, beautiful greenery. It's a time now where the rainy season is starting. That was really what kept catching my attention, is on the one hand the human despair, and on the other hand the natural beauty of the South. And there was that constant contrast that I was experiencing everywhere I went when I was down there. When we got off the bus in Kfar Aza, we had split up into two groups because we all had to wear helmets and protective gear, and it's still considered a military zone in many ways. If you think about Kfar Aza, not so long ago, there's still tunnels underneath that are being, that can be used to sabotage and to, attack any of the civilians living there. Most civilians don't live there anymore. There was one older couple who moved back. They wanted to live there. The army recommended not moving there, but they wouldn't stop them. So there was this one older couple that moved down there and moved back to their home. Otherwise, the kibbutz largely stands empty. And when I got off the bus, I took the bus, took the helmet, and joined the group. We were being led through the kibbutz by security professionals. So first responders, senior security officials, who are actually sharing with us a large part of the information that we wouldn't necessarily have received if we had gone with a different type of a leader, maybe political leader or someone from an organization. They explained to us the route, of that, the different areas where the terrorists infiltrated the kibbutz. They told us a little bit about different families. We weren't supposed to take pictures of the actual family names on the homes because it's part of their, protecting their privacy. So we were told what we could and couldn't take pictures of, where we could and couldn't go. And we walked through the kibbutz. They gave us information about what the markings on the buildings. You can see on many of the buildings a white square, that's essentially a mark that shows that Zaka, which is the organization in Israel for the respect and preparation of the dead. It shows that they had gone through the house and it had been cleared, meaning that there were no, there's a sanctity to human remains and so on. And so they go through the building and make sure that everything has been looked after and buried properly. So you
Okay,
see those on the houses as you walk through.
let's talk about Kfar Aza for a moment. There were 700 residents who lived there, of which 80 were killed, and 18 were kidnapped. Now, those numbers are dramatic. I was thinking about that when you send me information on your tour, and I thought, my God, we're talking about more than 10% of the entire kibbutz was wiped
Yeah.
out, and then on top of that, there were almost 2 dozen who were kidnapped. What must that do to the kibbutz, to the people who remain?
Yeah, and I think also what's really tragic is that there were whole families that were affected because, they may have all been there. They were all there together. They all tried to protect each other. So you see stories of, entire families that were essentially, destroyed in a few hours, in a day. So that type of dramatic loss to the one survivor from that family, or if there are any, and having these, this burial of an entire family is really, really dramatic, really, really, really upsetting. You see that and you understand what a tragedy that kibbutz, and you also see, like, once again, the contrast. What a beautiful space they lived in.
Yes.
All these small homes. All living in a very lovely lifestyle, beautiful nature, trees outside their homes, porch swings and bicycles out front, and lovely paths, for walking around. And you eventually you reach one area, which is the youth village, and that was the most difficult space to witness, because most of the hostages that were taken are from the youth village. And the youth village is essentially when people who live in the kibbutz, children, become adults.
Yes.
Legally, they are entitled to a home in the kibbutz, and many of those teens who become adults are all located in an area of the kibbutz, which is, like the youth village, where all of the younger adults live. So, on the walls and the front entrances of all of those homes, and they were very clear with us that the families have requested that nobody disrupt the homes, go into the homes, and so on, because on the front, that's what they have left to remember them. And I think that the families are still dealing with the loss. They don't want any type of change or so on. So you walk through and you see signs on the front, here's where so and so was brutally murdered, young 18, 19, 20-year-old. This is where so and so was kidnapped, and so on. And I didn't necessarily understand the bios of the people who I was walking through, seeing their names on the walls. So I looked them up after. For example, there was one young guy who had 8 beer bottles on his front doorstep, and I was wondering why there were empty beer bottles on his front doorstep. Then I read later that they had this, he was known for, being able to drink 8 beers at a sitting. So that was a memory for them. They left those on his doorstep. And there's one family that agreed to have people come into the home where their daughter had been killed. They made it into a somewhat of a visual walkthrough. They marked things showing where a grenade had exploded, where bullets had been shot at the wall, where some of her memorabilia were. A Judy Blume book is in her house, where she had spent a lot of time locked in the safe room until they had, broken in. There's a sign-in book there so that you can leave a message for the family. So that's unique. That's one family that did that. And I think they every person deals with their loss and with their pain in different ways. And for them, it was important to memorialize their family member, their daughter, and to put the museum together for her so that you could be a part, see some of her memorabilia, but also see what she went through in the last moments of her life.
How were you feeling at those points?
So I stepped out of her home, and there was this beautiful blossoming orange tree.
Yeah.
And I looked at the tree and I said to myself, there's no one to pick the oranges. They were all falling on the ground and getting, rotting. And I said, at first I started to think that I felt the way the Allied forces must have felt, the American troops and so on, when they came into the concentration camps to witness what the atrocities had been perpetrated against the Jews. And they took pictures and they memorialized it and so on. And there was this feeling of overall destruction and being appalled by what happened there. But then I reminded myself, and I think the tree helped me to remember that this isn't the end. In the death camps, there was only death. There's nothing left except a memorial, and there won't be anything there in the future. It's, that was an end. And I have to remind myself that in Israel, we struggled with a terrible situation, with a terrible experience, with terrible, and right now we're going through a difficult time trying to restore, safety and security and peace to to our country. But I have to believe that there will once again be, life. There will be, that this isn't just, a museum of death. That this is, I came to see it because I want to remember. I want to be able to have seen it and know in my heart and in my mind that, there was terrible evil that was done there, and I want to know that and remember it. But I want to also make sure that I remember that there is a future, and there will be a future. And if we look after and really and save, our hostages and protect our citizens and bring, and put an end to such evil, then, we have a bright future ahead of us. And I think the world needs to know that too. So when I left there, I didn't know if I would be able to talk about it. And then it took me a bit of time where I started to realize that there's a great importance in sharing that with the world and making sure that people know what happened. And
Devorah, while you were there, you took some pictures, and I'd like to share them with our viewers. And if you can walk us through exactly what we're looking at, and that'll take us on the tour that you were on. Just to add, you started in Kfar Aza, which is about 3
yeah.
kilometers away from Gaza, and then subsequently you went to Sderot, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's start with this picture right here. Still working with
So
my
wait,
tech.
so that's Sderot. That's
Yep.
Sderot. We take us back at the beginning. And I'll tell you what you're seeing there in a second. But let's go back to the pictures of no, that's Sderot.
Okay.
So at
I
the
should tell my viewers that we just put this interview together very, very quickly. So we're a little bit off on the pictures here, but tell me what this is here. Did you see that picture there?
No, starting at the beginning of what I sent you is Kfar Aza. So if we
All
start
right.
there,
Is that Kfar Aza there?
yeah, so that's Kfar Aza.
Yep.
So, many of the houses were burnt down, sometimes with the people inside, sometimes forcing them to leave the house because it was on fire, and then either killing them outside or kidnapping them. Israeli homes are, according to the building standards, they're mostly built with a safe room, which is supposed to be a bomb-proof area to protect them, especially in the south, from those types of attacks. And do you want to go to the next picture?
Yeah.
So as you can see, some of the homes were, destroyed. You can see the windows have been boarded up. Windows that were glass were, largely destroyed. A lot of the farming and gardening tools outside were either stolen or were destroyed as well. Bicycles and so on. So, memories, remnants of like a family that was there before.
Okay.
And if you go through towards the end, so here's, for example, one of the homes from the youth village. So, the sign says this home is where Ziv Berman was kidnapped from. And then you can see markings on the walls. There's different markings based on the army. The army marked, based on different things that had to do with evacuation, safety, security, and so on. And then you can see that small white square on the front door. And that's the Zaka square I was mentioning. That's the square that's like a sticker that's put on the door showing that the house has been cleaned of all, and been, is clean of all human remains.
One second.
So now we're back in Sderot, but like I said, those pictures in the deck, there's a bunch of them that are like that, showing you the walkthrough in Kfar Aza, different signs on the front doors showing who had been killed or kidnapped from that home, remnants of the gardening, of the bicycles, of the life that they once had front porch, front porch kind of paraphernalia, swings and pillows and whatever it was that they would use. So
This here that we're looking at is the yeshiva.
yeah, so in Sderot, there's still no residents that have returned to the city. It hasn't been secured for living. So all of the people in the south mostly have been evacuated from their homes, and they're living as refugees in hostels, guest homes, hotels, whatever, wherever they've been put up. They have very few personal belongings, and they're living sometimes an entire family in a room. The Sderot Yeshiva actually went back to activity recently, and I met with the head of the yeshiva there, who also talked to us about the day of. The day of was Simchat Torah, so there were a lot of people in the yeshiva. The yeshiva is on one of the main thoroughfares of the city, and for some reason the terrorists did not go into the yeshiva. Sderot, unlike Kfar Aza, where they went into everyone's homes and made sure to try to get anyone who was in any of the homes in Kfar Aza. In Sderot, they were very focused on killing anyone on the street. So they, it has more of a city-like feel. So they basically drove around shooting civilians, even a bus of elderly citizens who were going on one of these organized, seniors tours to the Dead Sea that day, and they were picking up a few people in Sderot on their way. They were all massacred. So like something like 15, 16 elderly who were on this minibus were all killed in Sderot on the street at a bus stop, And one of the things that they did in Sderot was that there was this beautiful, building. It was very impressive. It was a police station, but it was a very large center that provided a lot of security for the region. And the Hamas terrorists took possession of that building, and were armed with heavy artillery, and were they battled that center for a long time, trying to they didn't want to destroy the building because they thought there were still hostages inside. Once they were sure that there weren't any more hostages inside, that's when they eventually bombed it. But until then, they were fighting from the street. The Hamas terrorists had snipers all across the top of the building, shooting the soldiers who tried to get near to try to save any of the hostages inside. Unfortunately, I think most of the hostages inside this police station were killed. Crazy, there's so many heroic stories across the way. When you go walk through, they always tell you about the heroes on that day. And, just as an example, in the Sderot, this one guy realized, someone who had a combat experience realized that the snipers on the roof of the police station were killing any of the soldiers that got near. So he climbed up onto the building across the street, and I think I have a picture there of it. And he went into the second floor, took a firearm. Go back. Took a firearm, and from the second floor, hiding behind one back. This is the destruction of the center. But if you go back one, go back. No, that's Kfar Aza. If you go into this building across the street, no, you're in Kfar Aza. If you go, to the building across the street, there was, he climbed to the second floor, took a firearm, and killed the sniper. Once he killed the sniper, then they were able to get in and make sure that there were no more live hostages before bombing the police station. So Sderot, a different story. People were very scared, hiding in their homes as well, keeping very quiet, scared that they shouldn't be found out, or that anyone should realize they were there. Sderot has access from all sides, and the terrorists came in from all different sides of the city. And in some of the pictures I took, you can see from the roof of the yeshiva the view that you have all around of all of the different views, up there, almost like a vantage point where you could see. So that's part of it from the roof. There's even a higher vantage point where you could see all the way across to the border on the other side. And, the rabbi himself is a small little guy. He had to stand on a chair to talk to us, but those people who have great charisma, and he stood up on the chair. It took me a while to realize that he wasn't standing on a chair because he was such a charismatic person. And he said, you see you see the view over there? You see the view over there? He's like, well, look at it now, because we're going to keep building. And when you come back in a few years, you won't be able to see that view. The city's going to keep growing and we're going to keep building. The yeshiva is also serving, as a center for the soldiers. But, it's really impressive to see that, and to see that they've, gone back to activity.
Yeah. What I find fascinating about Israel, it's the juxtaposition between the very difficult and the very beautiful, the simplistic. Once you had gone on these tours of Kfar Aza and Sderot, your group decided to do something very special, which was to make a barbecue for Israeli soldiers. Tell us about that.
So the soldiers, it was for rescue units. These guys are going in every day, saving, searching for hostages, saving soldiers who need to be saved and taken out for medical care. They're constantly, risking their lives, and they've been out of civilian life for, almost 100 days now. So these are guys that are, really, really unbelievable, young reserves, sweet guys. And part of, the contribution that us civilians do for them is showing up and making a barbecue for them, because, as from you and I were talking about, young guys are very hungry all the time and very expensive to feed. They're always hungry. And whenever you make them a barbecue, they're going to eat. And a lot of them were going back, in on an operation later that night. Some of them were going, working out, coming to eat, whatever. And, we were sitting around. We had a chance to tour the base a bit. What was really fascinating is that they part of the soldiers being, going through and searching for the hostages and so on, is that they find a lot of, information inside as well. And you'd be appalled to see the things that, they're trying to learn about us, learn about Israel. Books about all different things that have to do with Israeli life, trying to learn the way of Israeli life, to be able to, perpetrate these types of attacks. And, the amount of information they find like that is unbelievable. But when we were making the barbecues, so, us, we're schmoozers. We come from a family of schmoozers. And I realized that all of the people who I was with were, they were mostly talking amongst themselves, and the soldiers were talking amongst themselves. And, I have a soft spot for, for the soldiers. So I went over and I spoke to them. I said, hey guys, thank you for letting us make a barbecue for you. It's really, we're really lucky to be able to do that for you. I said, do you know who we are? And they said, no, who are you? And I said to them, well, we're a bunch of people from the tech industry. And, it's really important for us to come and to see you and to be supportive of you. And you should just know we're all there for you. Even if we are, not with the battlefield, or we're not with you here on the base, we're there for you. And, that was the least we could do, is to come and, show up and do the barbecue. And I had a chance to talk to them. And some of them are techies, and some of them are engineers, and they're right now out of their civilian life, fighting until they're able to go home again. So it's like, there's a lot.
What was their response to you? Were they happy you were there?
They were so friendly, so nice. Yeah, it was, I guess it was nice for them to have someone to talk to. And at one point, I saw that they were, they were all sitting together. They've been very close. I asked them who their close friends were. I asked one guy, who's your closest friend? Who's your closest friend? And there were these two guys sitting next to each other. And I could see they were very much relying on each other for support. And so I said to him, don't only look at the present. Remember that sometimes when a destruction happens, it's our moment, it's our opportunity to bring new, good, and peace to the world. It's not like there was peace in the South before. And this is, we have the opportunity, you have the opportunity to save the hostages and to bring peace again to the South, so that the citizens can go home again. And I said, sometimes, I know you're looking at a lot of the devastation, but, think about the fact that there will be a chance to rebuild. And so his friend said to him, you hear what she's saying, And so, that was cute, because I think that, you think it, or they're with each other, but you need to have some from the outside say that to you so that you can feel reassured.
Devora, I have a 17-year-old son. So when things occur in the world that happen to that age group, in particular our soldiers in Israel who are 18 and up, inevitably I start to think about my boy and what if it were him and how I would react to that. I think one of the pieces that is obvious to me is how grateful we have to be to the parents, the grandparents, the families of the chayalim and the chayalot, the soldiers, both men and women, or young men and young women. You have a son who's in the army. He actually just came home for a little bit of a respite. He's eating a lot, and that's a good thing. When you saw these boys down there, when you were, having a barbecue with them, what resonated with you on a very personal level?
Well, I think I was thinking about the fact that, we always want to know that someone is being loving to our children, wherever they are, school, army, whatever. When they're outside of, when they're not in our home and in our own embrace, we always hope that there will be people who will be kind to them. So I did think about that. I thought about the fact that it's important to be kind and to show love and compassion because their parents aren't there. And I had I had the merit to, I was able to merit to be with them. So, I felt that that was important. They're about to go in on an operation that night, and like I would want them to hear something positive. If it was my son, I would want him to hear. So I felt that it was really important to create a feeling of compassion, love, and support for them, especially because they would be, facing something very difficult that night, and it would be important, for me to know that they had that if their parents weren't there. I just want to finish off by saying, after I left and I was driving home, there was a whole like flare of rocket fire coming from Gaza, and I could see that the rockets were at such an angle that they were heading more towards the south. So I kept, I got out of my car, but once I saw that the rockets had gone over, I kept driving. But I stopped at the side of the road, and there was a car there that had got a flat tire, because I told you there's a lot of potholes in the road from when the war was happening. And there was a young woman and her daughter who were, but it was their car, and there were two soldiers helping them change the tire. And as soon as the rockets flares went up, the girl started screaming and saying, I don't want to die. And she jumped into the trunk of the car, and she was hiding, and her mother had to talk her out. And I was thinking that she obviously had gone through a lot of trauma. It wasn't just a one moment thing that happened to her there. It was very traumatic. She was obviously living with a lot of trauma from the last experiences of the people in the South. And it just reminded me as well that, there's so many people who are left with so much loss and trauma from this, situation, that they'll have to deal with that. And, young kids, adults, families, and there's so much work that we have ahead of us, so much, to be able to heal, to be able to rebuild. So, that was difficult to see.
Devora, you arrived home in Jerusalem. You walked through your front door. What happened then?
It's just nice to be home. It's nice to have a home. I'm so grateful. I'm always so grateful about living in Jerusalem and having a home in Jerusalem. It's like the greatest blessing. And
were your hugs a little bit huggier to your kids?
I love walk through the door hugs. They're the best. Everyone goes back to doing what they were doing, but like when I come home, I've trained them well. Everyone comes to the door and hugs me, so that's the best. And took me, like I said, a bit of time to be able to think about it, but actually, we're going on another tour next week. Second tour next week, we'll be going to Be'eri and Re'em, two other very difficult locations that were hit badly on October 7th. So, I'd be happy to update once
Please.
I've done that. But for now, it was enough for me to realize the importance of going, taking pictures, experiencing it firsthand, to understand that I'm, as difficult as it is, I'm going to also go south again, bury, re'em, and then barbecue for the soldiers to do some good for them. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Devorah Mason, first-hand account of the atrocities, the massacres in the South. I want to thank you very much for sharing this with us, and hopefully a lot of people will see it. Want to apologize for some of the ragtag stuff of the technology. I'm still getting used to it and trying out different things. So thank you
You're
to the
great.
viewers. Yeah, thank you to the viewers for their patience. We'll get there. But I am I deeply admire your courage and your bravery, as you've shown throughout the war. Your siblings as well, your mom and dad. It's just incredible to watch your resilience and how you respond to the situation there. The idea of driving down there so early on to the south, uh, it's somewhat anathema to we here in Canada who maybe are not quite as courageous. So, kol hakavod to you. Well done. I'm very proud of you, and I look forward
Thank
to
you.
your next report and the information that we can share with others, because this is very important stuff. So, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Avram. Thank you. It's great to thank you for your questions always, and for giving me this platform to be able to share that. So
Yeah. And you've been listening to the Avrum Rosensweig Show. It's a podcast about ordinary folks with extraordinary stories. Please feel free to be in touch at avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com. We have lots of great shows coming up, including in a couple of weeks a podcast with Hillel Halkin, who is a very well-known Israeli writer, lives in Israel, and a fascinating individual. So Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel lives, and we should only get stronger and stronger. Once again, thank you to my guest, Devorah Mason, and we will be back soon.